Are we ever going to run out of oil? I don't think so. I think it will get so expensive that we'll stop using it as fuel and only use it for things that it's uniquely suited for. And our grandchildren will look back at us and say, you took a resource that took 100 million years to make and you burned it for fuel. What a ridiculous use for a fragile and precious resource like that.
This is Peak Moment. We are living at a peak of human innovation, information, wealth, and health. But we're also at a peak of population and consumption, with rising temperatures and declining resources fueled by cheap oil and gas. Peak Moment Television, bringing you examples of positive responses to energy decline and climate change through local community action.
Hi, welcome to Peak Moment. I'm Janaea Donaldson. I'm at the Letitia Winery at Arroyo Grande in California's Central Coast, and my guest today is Russ Teal, who's the president and founder of Biodiesel Industries, Inc. Thanks for joining me.
Pleasure to be here.
It is a beautiful, beautiful place to be. Thanks for suggesting it. Let's start at the ground level. What is biodiesel?
Biodiesel is a non-toxic and biodegradable alternative supplement to petroleum diesel. It can be run at 1% or it can be run pure at 100%.
In mixture with petroleum diesel?
It can be mixed with petroleum diesel or run on its own, and it can run in any diesel engine without conversion. So that, there's no changeover. Nice. The original diesel engine was invented by Dr. Rudolf Diesel and actually ran on peanut oil when he showed it at the World's Fair in 1900.
Okay, so we're kind of coming back round to what he started.
His vision was that this new engine was going to be the power source for the 20th century, and it would run on vegetable oils grown by farmers. And what half of it came true. We've got diesel engines everywhere running on petroleum and creating huge problems with pollution, sustainability, global conflict, etc. So we're really going back to what the diesel engine was originally designed for.
So when the biodiesel that you and others are making now, what are you using for your source? I mean, not the peanuts, I'm sure could be some of that, but what are we making biodiesel from?
Well, the feedstocks that can be used for biodiesel include any of the vegetable oils or animal fats. They're all chemically what are called triglycerides, and the process of making biodiesel oxygenates that and strips off the glycerin and converts it into a very efficient and high quality diesel fuel. It's actually a higher quality diesel fuel than petroleum diesel.
In what way?
Higher cetane, which is like octane is to gasoline.
So higher power gunch or whatever you...
Better burnability.
Okay.
Better lubricity, much lower emissions. It's non-toxic. You can actually drink the fuel. We don't recommend it. Well, it's a very powerful laxative.
Oh my goodness.
So it would improve your exhaust.
So in terms of emissions, because that's part of what you're saying here, is it's a lot less toxic, and that would then affect greenhouse gases and other things as well? Tell me about the emission side.
Well, on a life cycle analysis, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory found that looking at everything that goes into making biodiesel, from the farmer's fields to crushing and transportation, there's a 78% reduction in greenhouse gases compared to petroleum.
That's phenomenal. Now, is that assuming that the farmers are using diesel in their tractors or in the refinery equipment and so on, or?
Well, it's assuming that they're using traditional energy resources, that they're using petroleum diesel. It would be 100% if they ran on biodiesel.
That's kind of, and if the crushing and the other processing were also done with biodiesel, either running the electricity. Is that right? Can it be used as a source for electricity?
You can burn it in a diesel generator to produce electricity.
May not be the most efficient thing to do, but it's possible. So how did you get involved with biodiesel?
Purely by accident. I was living in the Florida Keys and read a trade publication about a guy that had gone around the world in an inflatable boat powered by biodiesel, and I thought, this guy's crazy, number one, but what's this biodiesel stuff? So I called an 800 number and talked to some of the people that were involved in the new trade association that was being formed, called the National Biodiesel Board. And to make a long story short, I ended up being hired as a consultant, and saw that it was a very good product, but the economics didn't work out.
So how long ago was this?
That was 13 years ago.
Okay, so it made sense maybe environmentally? Or how did it, why did it make sense? And
it was a good product, and from an environmental point of view, it's sustainable, it lowers emissions, it's non-toxic, it had all the benefits, and it works in all the existing infrastructure.
Right.
But economically, it didn't make sense. And that's part of the problem with a lot of environmental projects, is that environmentally it's sustainable, but economically it's not. So the challenge was to find a way to make biodiesel economically sustainable.
Is that because why were the economics not, you just couldn't go up against the price of diesel, petroleum diesel at that time?
Part of it is back to the feedstock question. There's 2 or 3 factors that make biodiesel expensive at the time, and even some production currently. The most expensive factor is feedstock. If you take a food-grade refined vegetable oil like soybean oil that starts at $2.40 a gallon, it goes up from there.
Yes. Yes.
If you build on the petroleum industry model, which is large, centralized production facilities that are very expensive to put together, and then you've got transportation to get it from, say, Iowa to California, that adds to the expense.
Okay.
And so our concept was to design and build smaller modular plants that had multiple feedstocks, so that we could use crude vegetable oils, waste vegetable oils, anything that was available locally, so that we could site the plants where the fuel was going to be used and cut down transportation costs.
So your model, that sort of decentralized model, right? So that you could have localities having their own biodiesel production and then consumption in that area.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
I wish I could say it was brilliant, but it was obvious. When you looked at it, people had the old mindset of, we're making fuel, and so we need to build a big refinery.
I see.
Okay. So, and it was driven by a lot of agribusiness economics. Companies like ADM and Bunge, want to use their soybean oil. And so that's been one of the drivers. We've gone, the other direction on it, smaller, decentralized.
We, the Biodiesel Association, or who's we?
We as a company.
Your company.
We as a company.
So what I read between the lines here is, in your model, you're looking at empowering various localities rather than the big guys in agribusiness.
We just did a feasibility study in India for the U.S. Agency for International Development, and this was 3 years ago is when we started it. And the Indian government wanted biodiesel to be made out of non-food grade materials. So if the oils could be eaten, they should be eaten.
We'll get back to that issue of food and fuel.
And located in rural areas. And so the model we came up with was to find plants that produce non-edible oils that could be grown on non-prime agricultural land, didn't require a lot of pesticides or fertilizers. And the net result was that a single biodiesel plant with a capacity of about 3 million gallons a year would, through the harvesting and collecting of these materials, double the rural farm income for 20,000 families.
Wow.
Huge. They don't get paid a lot to begin with. It's a relative concept, but a big impact for the people in that area.
I mean, double is big.
Well, and the money for energy was going out of the country.
Yes.
This way it's kept in the country, in the local economy, at the lowest possible level, and then it floats up instead of trickles down. Right?
So the trickle down hasn't always happened.
It doesn't always trickle, does it?
So you're empowering people at the grassroots level. That's true localization of their economy. Mm-hmm. So did a pilot come out of this? What did you have? Are they started to do any of what you're talking about?
The work in India was at the government level and also at the local level, and government needs to enact policies. What is biodiesel, how's it going to be taxed, et cetera. And they have a planning commission at the national level that has recommended policies. It's before the Parliament now, and it'll probably get passed within the next 6 months. In the meantime, we're starting to grow these non-edible oil plants out of Mysore, which is near Bangalore in southern India. And we're able to bring back some of the seeds under a USDA permit to see how they would do in the climate here on the Central Coast, and also a project down in Mexico. And
so that's the plant, the Jatropha plant?
Jatropha curcas.
Okay, which came actually from the tropics.
It actually came from Honduras, carried by Portuguese sailors to India 400 years ago.
My goodness.
To be used as a living fence, because animals and insects don't like it. They could plant it as a fence to protect their crops. And what the Indian farmers, who are very resourceful, found was that the nut had oil in it, and they could squeeze it and make oil for their lamps. And so over a period of 400 years, they selectively bred these plants to have higher and higher oil content. So now the seeds have over 50% oil. And so we're actually bringing back a plant that was taken to India 400 years ago and growing it in the climates that are suitable in North America.
Which we can hope, the warm climates in here, this could be something in our sun belt, whatever, to produce the fuels. Well, certainly I could see that biodiesel makes sense in a world in which our petroleum supplies are going to be coming down. I mean, I could imagine there's much more interest because of the changes there.
Look at the price of petroleum. And in the long term, it's not going to get much better. It's a finite resource that took 100 million years to produce, and we're burning it at a prodigious rate. The head of the American Petroleum Institute was on TV a couple of years ago saying we don't have to worry because we've got 20 or 30 years supply of reserves given current levels of demand. And that was the chilling part of it. If you've been to India or China or other parts of the emerging world, they want the same energy lifestyle that we have.
And their populations and that demand is going up, up.
Is soaring. And so, we have a very small window of time to go to sustainable resources.
I want your opinion on this, because Robert Hirsch, the Hirsch report that the Department of Energy put out, came out at February '05. He said that it would take 15 to 20 years for us to build the infrastructure to shift to a different energy base, from petroleum to something else. And there are people after peak oil. From that point, we need 15 to 20 years. Well, no, I shouldn't say that right. We need that long to build the infrastructure. If peak oil is here in 5 years, we've got some. We're not here. We have a gap. So I'm looking at how, from your vantage point, biodiesel is one of those alternate fuel sources that we can transition to. How soon do you think you could meet the needs? The projections to meet the needs for our diesel use, say here in the United States?
There is roughly 100 billion gallons a year of middle distillates, which is what diesel is, used in the United States. Roughly half of that for transportation, for trucks, for ships, for rail, and the other half for power generation and industrial boilers. There are resources right now that would take care of about 5% of that. 5%. And so looking into the future, we need to develop new resources, new oil sources, and we haven't focused on that. There are plants that can be grown, like the Jatropha, for instance, waste oil resources from restaurants. Algae is very promising and can be grown in a very compact area, and it can actually take the exhaust from a power plant and strip the CO2 off of it. So we haven't had that mindset. And the economics haven't been there. The good news about rising oil prices is that it makes a lot of the alternatives economic.
Certainly, one could wish that we would be getting federal and state level investment incentives for industries like biodiesel, just as they did for nuclear, to really set this going, and for both the research and the product creation for this. It's not happening, and so I realize you have to deal with the marketplace here. which is going to be affected by the petroleum price. So we're kind of at this tension. There's a tension about having that product come.
The problem is consistency, and this is something that the wind energy industry has gone through over the last 30 years, is that sometimes the politics are right and the right administration is in there and there's all these incentives, and then there's a change in administration and a change in policy, and so it falls apart. So there's been no long-term consistent approach to it, and I think people are coming to the awareness from an energy security viewpoint that if we want to have a secure source of energy and not be involved in foreign wars in areas of the world where we really have no strategic interest other than energy, that we need to become sustainable. And we're really starting to see bipartisan support for that. Part of it is that the first presidential race starts in Iowa with the caucuses, right? And so the farmers, you know, make it an issue. And it's really been driven by the farmers to this point for building bipartisan support for it. So you know, it's like the the Bud Bowl or whatever they call it. You know, tastes great, less filling. Right? It's energy security and the environment. And those are the two drivers, basically.
So if we are now, your biodiesel is now what, 5% of the diesel usage? Is that, did I understand right?
No, it has a potential to be 5%. Right now, biodiesel usage has gone from almost nothing to about 250 million gallons a year. It's tripled each year for the last 2 years because the economics are in place. There's a very strong federal subsidy now for biodiesel to help lower the cost of it, and the price of oil went up at the same time. So you've got a confluence of events there. But if the subsidy is removed or the price of oil goes down, then you've got that inconsistency. And most of that is driven by feedstocks. It's possible to make biodiesel out of recycled materials or out of other waste oils or crude vegetable oils and animal fats, but the focus has been by agribusiness.
So they're going to want to use their virgin oils.
They want to use the most expensive oils for making biodiesel, which means that the subsidy is required. So that's kind of the give and take on it. But what it's done really is attracted a lot of capital into the market. There's a very hot capital market right now, and the venture capital community is putting billions of dollars into what they call clean tech.
Yes, clean technologies.
So the new types of batteries, the Tesla electric cars, wind energy, ethanol, biodiesel, et cetera. So the marketplace is responding.
Good.
Yeah, it is good in a way. You know, if people are in it for the money, then they get into something without necessarily understanding the foundation or reason for it. It's a way to attract capital, and venture capitalists realize that, and so there's a broad range of investments, and a lot of them don't succeed and some of them do. And so we've seen a rash of new companies coming into this space, not necessarily knowing what they're doing, and there's been a real quality control problem. There's a very strict specification for biodiesel, and a new company that doesn't understand what they're doing doesn't necessarily follow that. So
that actually reminds me is that you've been producing biodiesel in plants in different places. So tell us a little bit about that. What are you using for feedstock? You know,
we've built 5 plants. Our company builds, owns, and operates. When we got started, there was no biodiesel production equipment and that did what it was that we wanted to do. So we were fortunate to enter into a cooperative research and development agreement with the U.S. Navy. And you know, the Navy's strategic interest is energy security, and our interest is making biodiesel, and so the two interests, you know, worked out well together. And the modular design means that it's deployable; it can be put anywhere.
For your production units,
right?
Is that right?
Yeah, okay. They're prefabricated at a central location, so that They can be shipped anywhere in the world. We have a plant in Australia. Everything fits into one shipping container. It gets sent over there, hooked up and set up. It's about 3 months from beginning to end. So we've got a 3 million gallon a year facility in Colorado, one in Texas, Australia. We have a smaller one at the naval base that we're expanding to 10 million gallons a year. The
naval base in Ventura County?
California,
okay,
down
right
at Port Hueneme. And the feedstocks vary with each area because every area has different feedstocks. So in Australia, it's almost 100% recycled cooking oil. There's a large population base there, and we're able to collect a lot of that. In Texas, it's the recycled cooking oil together with crude cottonseed oil and sunflower seed oil, as well as some poultry fat. In Colorado, it's predominantly used cooking oil, but we also get beef tallow. It's a cattle area, and what we're doing with the newer plants is trying to interconnect with the farmers directly to grow crops on marginal land that doesn't require irrigation. So it's dry land agriculture. We have a project in the Central Valley in the Westlands Water District, which has selenium contamination from over-irrigation, and so they've closed it down. There's no water available to it anymore. It's virtually valueless land. We started growing canola on it and found that the canola actually takes the selenium out of the soil. It ends up in the meal when we crush the seed, and it's at a level that's actually a nutritional supplement for cattle.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're doing actually bioremediation of those, reclaiming those lands at the same. I mean, this is heartening to have multiple purposes working that way.
Well, that's the kind of thing we haven't thought about. You can look at existing resources, but you need to be thinking about what are the resources that could be.
Well, and that ties into the question, the big question that comes up for a lot of folks around biodiesel is that if we were going to attempt to convert over all of to fulfill our diesel needs with biodiesel and grow it all on our good farmland, there are estimates from anywhere from 2 to 5 times as much arable farmland as we have. And there, of course, is who doesn't eat? You know, do we ship things around and nobody eats? But you're talking about different things. You're talking about reusing oils that are already here, and you're talking about using marginal lands so that you've got less resource use.
It's really important to understand the facts and the chain that agriculture goes through for delivering products. There is more than enough land to feed every single person on the globe if we all became vegetarians.
Okay.
We're growing prodigious amounts of grain and corn to feed cattle and chickens at a rate of 5 to 20 times the poundage that we get out of meat. And so, is it possible to have food and sustainable energy? Absolutely. The other end of it is to look at marginal lands, as well. So the food and fuel debate, it's an important one to have. And I think that using a food grade product to make fuel is the wrong way to go on it. But it's possible, to do it. In Santa Barbara, we did a study with the Community Environmental Council with Tam Hunt and ran through some figures, and it's possible on the Gaviota Coast on ranch land that's used for cattle grazing that has a very low value to the ranchers and is slated for development because of that, to actually grow jatropha, hopefully, which is what we're doing with the Green Academy, just in that one section of coast, and it would produce enough oil to make Santa Barbara totally petroleum independent in terms of its diesel needs.
So that's the exciting kind of information that we need, the kind of model that we need, particularly that use of marginal lands. I mean, that to fill your whole county, that's pretty amazing. Yeah,
it's about 28 million gallons a year, and if you draw a 3-mile radius circle and planted it all in Jatropha and had a biodiesel plant in the middle, at maturity that would generate about 30 million gallons a year. So it's a relatively small, area. Yeah.
So in our last 2 minutes, are there any, little other things that we haven't covered that you want to make sure we know about biodiesel itself?
I think that it's important for people to take personal responsibility for their energy choices. And we consume so much that efficiency is probably the first step. Having a more fuel-efficient car. There's a lot of new diesel vehicles coming out now, passenger vehicles. They've been very prevalent in Europe for years because the price of fuel is so high. And a diesel vehicle gets about 30 to 40% better mileage. So as these vehicles become available, the smart car, the diesel that's available in Europe gets 70 miles to the gallon. At this point, with our fuel being $2, $3, $4 a gallon, it makes sense to make that sort of choice. And if, in addition to that, you can start using a renewable, sustainable fuel as it becomes available, the economics should be such that it costs no more than a petroleum-based product. And it's going to be pulled through from consumers, at their gas station.
Yeah, we have this catch-22. We're ready for the vehicles so that we can demand the right fuel, but we also have people in our community, for example, saying, where are the biodiesel suppliers? So we're having to move all the fronts sort of at one time here.
Yeah.
It's good.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the last minute here, what gives you hope as we move forward?
Everything, when I got started in this business, there was a certain inevitability to it. That if we're going to maintain our energy lifestyle, we have to go to sustainables. There is no choice. It's a matter of when, not if. And that intersection of time is what environmentalists call either a hard landing or a soft landing. And if we don't start now, we're going to have a very hard landing. When the crunch hits, it could be very catastrophic. So starting now and having people start to accept it and seeing the market acceptance of it and petroleum prices going up, and suddenly our product is cost competitive with petroleum, it's a very hopeful sign. So,
may it really be a soft landing.
Let's hope.
Thank you. This has been wonderful. You're watching Peak Moment, community responses for a changing energy future. We're talking energy. Thanks for joining us.